Hello everybody, welcome back to C6 Corvettes in Sarasota, Florida. It's your Corvette buddy Lyle here, and as promised, we have managed to put together the step-by-step how-to video for the C6 Corvette automatic shifter harness. I did a video on that new product a couple of weeks ago. I know many of you have been anxiously awaiting the step-by-step guide so you can do it at home yourselves. And I actually was fortunate enough to get Dr. Ray, our lead tech, to be able to walk you through it step by step. So in just a moment we're going to get into that so you can see how that is done from the beginning to the end. Before you do that, if you appreciate what we're doing here, it really helps us out if you hit the like button under the video, the subscribe button under the video. Again, I know it sounds like ad nauseum and everybody on YouTube says it, but that's because it really does help us. So we are providing this free service, teaching you step by step how to do this job without hurting anything. And in return, we'd appreciate if you did that for us. All right, well, let's let Dr. Ray show you how to do this job.
Okay, so first thing we want to do is actually take off the armrest cover door. Take these screws out by hand, because if you try to use power tools on these ones, you have a likeliness of stripping them, and that's the last thing that you want to do when you're taking this apart, or at least trying to put it in as well. You can see that this door has already been stripped previously, so we got to take extra care with this one. Okay. You can see the spot where it's been stripped out previously. Take a bunch of care when putting it back on. Set that off to the side. Make sure we put our screws in a place that's not going to get in the way of anything else, or lose them altogether. Take our flathead, gently pry up on this, move this out of the way. On the later versions, you don't have to worry about that part. Now, taking off the handbrake boot, you're going to lift forward and up on the front, back a little bit, up on the rear. You'll be able to see where these clips are. They go right down into there. On the side. And then they attach here to the front, so you can know what you're dealing with before you have to try and take it out. We're going to take our 7mm and we're going to undo these screws here to release the backside of the center console. Now we've got the two screws that are on the little side piece of the actual center console. Some people call it the boomerang. This is what keeps it in place. Again, 7mm. You can see this one here is stripped, so it's giving a little bit of extra trouble on its way out. This is why you want to be very careful as when you're putting them in to make sure they are going in straight, not sideways. See the metal that is pulled off of that one. Now to remove this piece here, it's going to slide back. So down and back, and releases the two clips. Now you have access to the center console itself. You gotta put that down into the lowest position, drive 1. That's for manual. You're going to lift up on the center console and back. This is also held in with those clips. Okay. Once you have everything nice and released, you're going to have to get to the traction button from the bottom, and also the 12 volt. You're going to have to get to the seat controls, the heated seat controls, and also the hazard switch. Those are the electrical connections that you have to get to. The 12 volt from the armrest area is going to be a little bit difficult to get to because the actual tab is on the top side of it. Traction control button, you'll have to use your flathead and release the clip up underneath there. Not quite as difficult as the 12 volt. Bring this forward, don't pull too far. Release the 12 volt connector in the back. Not too easy to see with the camera angle, but we'll show it to you after we get it out. Alright, so once we're releasing the connectors for the heated seat, we'll also release the connector for the hazard switch. With that popping out, we're clearing the shift knob as you pull up. Okay, so now we're going to be taking the shifter boot and releasing that from the actual shifter assembly. It's leather with the elastic around the bottom, so you take the driver's side off first. And you'll notice on the passenger side of the actual boot, there are 3 little prongs that the boot clips down onto, just to keep it a little bit secure. So we pull this out of the way, clear the back one. It's right there. So the middle one right there. And also clear the front one. So now we're going to put it into accessory. This one having the Paul issue, having to manually bring it back so you can take it out of park. Now what we're wanting to do is to actually release the surround for the shift indicator that is attached to the actual shifter boot. You have 2 areas that you've got to spread the connector. The keepers to it. 2 areas where you want to spread the keepers to that surround and lift it right up. Now you've released everything with the actual boot to the shifter. Okay, next step is we need to remove the actual shifter knob itself. So underneath the knob, it's actually hidden underneath the shifter boot, is the actual securing locking collar. I'm going to turn it clockwise just a little bit, about 45 degrees. Just turning it to the right. It's going to take a little bit of pressure. But be very careful. Don't aim it towards your face or towards the radio. And it comes off like that. Take a look at the bottom. You'll be able to see that little collar, how it clicks. There you go. Better view. So now you can manually put that back to the park and get everything out of your way. Move the wires off to the side. This is the connector here that we will be working with. We're going to take the two securing tabs that hold this wiring harness to the shifter assembly itself. Get that one out of there. Goes right into there. Same with the front one. Moves that wiring harness right out of your way. Now we've got this little zip tie that holds the wiring harness to the rear part of the upper housing of the shifter. So to get that, you got two separate tabs that face away from each other. Take one out, and then use the flathead to bring the other one out of the way. And squeeze them together, in a sense. Now that you got that loosened up, this collar will come straight up off there. This is the collar that actually attaches to your shift indicator itself. Kind of give you a better idea of what it is. Okay. Just to kind of reiterate it, once this backside comes up, you'll notice that shift indicator and the collar come up. Show that to you. Right there. Bring that. Lift that to the left and bring that collar up out of there. Yeah. Back release, front side will come up just by lifting forward and going back and forth with it. There's the front side of the tabs, just the same as the back side. With the light from the shift indicator, take that out of the way. We're going to take these two switches out and the wiring. Bring that out. This is all the wiring that we're going to be replacing. Well, I take the bulb out of the shift indicator illumination. Save that, because we're going to need the new pieces. Alright. We're going to bring all of these wires out of the keepers that are around the shift indicator. Out of the shifter assembly. Take the black and green wire for the illumination light. We're going to undo this connector here. Flathead, move that back, and out of the way. We'll take the main connector, press down on that tab, pull it apart. See how they go together there. Take these wires out of the keepers. You fit pretty tight in there, so you have to have a little bit of patience and just be a little bit gentle. Notice that the yellow and white are the switches, the wire to the switches on top, right toward the front of the vehicle, and then the green, and then the orange and blue are the ones towards the back. Towards the front, yellow and white. Towards the rear, orange and blue. There are two little tabs that hold these in place, so they need to be gently pulled off to the side. I'm just doing that with my thumb, or with my first finger. Just gently lift that up just so it clears it. Same thing with the other side. Gently push that off to the side, and lift. There you go. Top side is up. Same thing. Push off to the side, gently, and lift up your flat blade. Off to the side, lift up. There you go. There's the old harness that we'll be replacing. Okay. Since we're this far, we're also going to remove the rest of the assembly and out of the way to check the front shifter cable grommet. Remove these four 10mm bolts. Also notice that we do have the shifter itself pulled back down to drive towards manual. This will give us a little bit more room so that we can actually look down and see, so that we aren't having to go with too tight of an area to try and release the actual shifter stud from the grommet. Gently, gently, gently lift up. Looking straight down there, you see the actual shift lever connected to the shift cable end. See it clearly there? Large flat blade. Put it in between the shift cable end and the shifter end itself. Look at that. That is a perfect example of a shift cable grommet that is basically detached itself. That is split in half. The other side of that is still in the end of the cable. So now, notice this is as high as you want to pull that up. If you pull that up towards the top of the vehicle anymore, you risk breaking the actual mount of it. So now that we've got that, I'm going to use a small flathead to basically try and pry the other end, the other side, shifting cable grommet out of its actual housing. It's much easier when they've already started to fall apart. Not, you'll sometimes have to apply some heat to make them malleable so that you can get it out of here. But always remember, don't lift up on this too high. It's in the position where it's at in relation to the actual torque tube. That's your torque tube down there. You can see a little bit of prying, pieces are flying everywhere. Boink! There it goes. There's your broken pieces. That is, and comparing it to the new, improved versions. You see there's a relief cut made of probably much stronger material that is much more resistant to the heat that this area experiences all the time. Okay? So now you'll see, holding it no higher, put that back into its place. What I'm actually doing is I'm kind of sandwiching it up against the side of the torque tube so that I can use that as leverage to push that in there. Now you can see that it is in place. It's nice and solid and secure. Now, we're going to put this back in, and this is the part that you have to be very careful with. You're going to bring that up gently, not to go past the area that we said. You don't want to pull it up too high. You're going to match up the shift cable end to the actual shifter lever and push using the torque tube stability, just pushing it against the torque tube itself. Push the stud into the new shifter cable grommet. Once you've got that where you know that it's secure, you know that it is in its place, put the shifter assembly back down onto the studs. And we're going to put the nuts back down on it to make sure it's nice and secure, so that when we do test it, it's not going to end up pushing it all over the place. Check it, make sure that everything feels exactly as it should be. Right. Here's an issue that you want to check and make sure is not going to be a problem. Remember, we talked about breaking off that little edge of the shift indicator itself, the orange part. Sometimes they break, they end up right there. What that does, it gets in the way of not being able to put your shifter all the way forward into the park position. If you can't put it all the way forward, the switches will not be able to be contacted, and they won't be able to do their job. Always check down here and make sure there's nothing in the way. This is a piece that can break off and end up down there. Take some needle nose pliers or your tool of choice. Make sure that is out of the way. Now we're going to start putting our new wiring harness in place. Remember, yellow and white on top, orange and blue on bottom, or respectively front and rear. Okay, you've got the two little posts that each one of those clips down into. Remember that you've got the two tabs on each side that is going to secure it and hold it down. Start to press the wires down into the keepers. These wires are the slightest bit thicker than the old style, so it's going to need a little bit more pressure. Just put them down into the keepers here. Do one wire at a time. Make sure you don't push too hard to cause any damage to the wires or to break the actual keepers there. Sometimes you can use the blunt end of a nylon pry bar to help assist with pushing that down. Again, blunt being the word. Make sure it's not sharp. You don't want it to cause any damage to the wires themselves. Follow this down through. Now we got the connector for the actual shifter pole solenoid. Connect that. Now you've also got the wires for the shift indicator illumination. Just make sure everything is tucked into its proper place. Make sure you have plenty of wire so that nothing is too tight. You don't want to cause anything being under tension. Alright, take the bulb from the original one, and we're going to put it back into the new one. Now we're going to take the connectors. This is the main connector. Always take a look down, make sure that the pins themselves are nice and straight. Connect that, make sure it clicks. We're going to put that connector back down into its home where it stays nice and secure. We are going to check to make sure that both of the rollers, both of the switches are contacting positive. We want to make sure as we move them, we hear them click, that they are doing exactly as they're supposed to. Put the accessories mode on, and make sure that you test it. As you're pushing down, you should hear the shift ball moving back and forth. With everything out of the way, you can make sure that you've got good contact with it. As that comes forward, the switch towards the back is what tells the vehicle that it is in park. You want to make sure that that setting is correct. Make sure that setting is correctly adjusted. Now the important part of wanting to adjust these and test them while we have everything out is that the rear switch is working fine on this one. The front one is not. As we push this forward, you'll see how that is contacting it just fine. The front one is not making full contact, so it is not pulling the pawl down to release it. That's why we test before we put everything back together. So to adjust it, put some small needle nose pliers right there. The slightest amount of movement to put a slight bend in that arm there. So now we can hear positive shifts. See the pawl move? Perfect. Now that it's telling it that the vehicle is completely in park and secure. You can see here from the top side, the tiniest amount of bend. But to be able to make sure that that roller is contacting every part of the shifter separate. Put the illumination light back into the shifter indicator. Now we're going to get the front side in first. Now we're going to take that little collar that goes down right onto the actual shifter lever itself. Make sure it is in the correct orientation. Move that a little bit off to the side so that that fits right into the side of it. The indicator will go right into its own little happy home on that collar. Now make sure all the wires are out of the way. Press down and secure the back side. See here, this wire is in the way, so we want to make sure that's where it's supposed to be. There we go, nice and tight. Making sure we have firm positive shifts with our shift cable, knowing that our grommet is. Now we're going to put the knob back down onto the actual shift lever. Again, remember that collar. Going to make sure that is turned clockwise, about 45 degrees. Put that straight down onto there. It takes a little bit of some gentle massaging down into there because you have to make sure that it gets everything lined up correctly. Once that's down onto there, press down, boop, and then turn that collar counterclockwise to lock it in place. Now we've got the shift indicator surround that is attached to the shifter boot. It's going to go back down around the shift indicator itself. Remember the front and back areas where it holds it secure. We'll put the tabs down into them. First we'll take a look on the back side. Down and secure. Front side you might have to move some foam out of the way a little bit. Right there. Make sure that's lined up. Set down. Make sure that is secure. See how the foam kind of folds back right over it. Now as we're putting the actual shifter boot back down, remember there are 3 areas in there that hold on to the tabs on the side of the shifter assembly itself. Make sure we line those up correctly. The rear one, center one, and the one to the front. Line those holes up with the front one, and with the center one, and then with the rear one. We just kind of work it around with the elastic, bring it down, bottom of it, make sure that everything is nice and tight, secure, and centered correctly. Make sure that you have positive movement, again, testing every way as we go. Okay. Now we have it in off. Now we see it's not moving. Put it to accessory, and that moves. Shifter follows doing its job. Now we're just going to start putting things back together, make sure everything is secure, back in the place where it came from. The wire harness is put back into these keepers on the side of the actual shifter assembly. You see where all the wires are just kind of coming back there, connectors for everything that we're putting back together. You see the back side, hazard switch goes right into there. Hazard switch button. And we've got the 2 connectors for the seat heaters. That's what they look like from the back side. One there and one there. Volt connector right there. That's a connector for the traction control switch. See that up underneath there. And then you have the other connector for the 12 volts for the armrest area. That. And let's take a look here. Notice that the actual tag goes on the top side. That's what makes it difficult to take out of there. Right. Make sure the shifter is again set all the way back towards the back. Makes installation of it much easier, and it's actually required so you don't scratch the shifter out. We're going to hook up the hazard switch first. Fit. Make sure that everything is working correctly. Again, always test as we put things back. Make sure everything's working. Plug in the connectors for the seat heaters. turn the accessories on, or at least turn the, you have to turn the ignition on to be able to test things. I'm going to hook up the traction control button and also the propulsion. Make sure everything is tucked out of the way, put everything down, especially out of the way of the cup holders. Everything is pretty much cleared. I'm going to push this forward gently. Those will click into place. What we'll do is we're going to come around to the other side in just a moment to make sure that you get this in the correct position. Make sure that this tucks behind the armrest. Otherwise, you get it all back together and realize that's in the wrong place. Go back and do it again. So now we're going to take the 7mm screws and put them in the back side of the center console. Just kind of lining these up by hand to make sure that they aren't going to cross thread or strip or anything. Right, now we're going to put the side console back in. These are the two tabs that go right up underneath into this area, just to the left of the glove box. Those are the important ones to line up. We're going to take those, line those up with that, and make sure that everything is lined up with the side of the console itself, that's up underneath there. There you go. We're going to push it forward, straight up. Nice and solid. Now we're going to put 2 screws in from the side, again, millimeter head. Put those ones in, if they're nice and tight. Making sure that the boot, the emergency handle boot, parking brake handle boot is going in the correct spot. Front side in first. Line up the back side, push straight down. Okay, now we're going to put the center piece down in there. That should push down into place. Now we're ready to put the armrest back. Again, remember that these were stripped from before. Be careful with these ones. Line that up with those centering pins that are on there. And then line the screws up by hand. Again, you don't want it to start drilling something in and then strip it. Put 2 of them in first, make sure everything's lined up. By hand, gently tighten those up. Notice I'm not gripping the screwdriver with a full grip, I'm just using my fingers to gently tighten those up and snug them. Make sure those 2 screws are nice and snug. Now with the remaining 2 screws in, again, gently by hand, snugging those up. These don't need to be so tight that you can never get them back out, because you will strip it. There you go, snug and secure. Now test to make sure that this is fitting correctly. Nice, good, positive click down there on the release handle. Keep it solid. Now we're just checking to make sure that both of our seat heaters are working. And off. 12 volt.
Well, that's it, guys. Hopefully that was perfectly understandable. Dr. Ray is very detail oriented. He's one of the very best in the business when it comes to Corvettes. If you have comments or questions, put them in the comments section below and I'll be reviewing them as quickly as I can when the video comes out, so you're not waiting weeks and weeks for an answer if you have a problem. Other than that, thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful weekend.